What's the shortest sluice box you can get away with and have less than a 15% loss rate? That banger of a question comes from David Rowan, patron. If you would like your question answered in video format like this, you can jump on Patreon for $1.50. But let's get right into it. A lot of people don't know that the most important part of a sluice box is actually your hopper, where you feed the dirt into. So as we're shoveling in the creek, we've got all of our dirt entering this box, and we have, in this case, spray bars either side that create an X pattern and decimate clay as it goes through. So as it goes through those spray bars, it rips the clay apart and that liberates the gold. And as I said, it is the most important part of a high banker. When you throw rocks through a high banker, they are covered in dirt and mud. So this is hard rock ore, but we're using it as the example. You want to liberate all of the dirt off these rocks. So even the smallest little pebble will have stuff stuck to it. And every single one of them has the chance of having gold stuck to it. This is where your gold is. It's in the sticky dirt. It hits something it can't sink through. And often, that is pieces of gravel. Therefore, these are what do that. Now you can have different versions, different setups of your hopper box to increase the thing called resonance time. And that is simply how long this water is in contact with your gravel up here. The longer the resonance time, the more rocks get washed. This is why trommels are so incredibly effective, because you spend a lot of, your rocks, spend a lot of time in contact with that water. It breaks up all the clay, it washes all the rocks spotlessly clean, and then you know that there is no chance you're going to have loss either out the back of your high banker or down your run. Let me explain that. If you have inferior resonance time and you're allowing dirt to be stuck to the rocks, it can fall off the back in the oversized material, because those grizzly bars are going to classify that out. That goes for clay as well. If your grizzly bars don't break up your clay balls, they can fall off the back, or they can go through the grizzly bars if they're small enough and come out the other end of your run. And this is a big thing with loss. Just because it made it through the grizzly bars, if you have a piece of gold stuck on a rock that doesn't get captured in this because it's too light, it's not going to catch it. For example, quartz like this is very light. It weighs a 2.6, I believe, and in density compared to gold, which is 19.2, 2.6 is going to roll straight out of the high banker. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to shed light stuff and only collect really, really heavy things. Therefore, if you have a tiny itty bitty piece of gold stuck to a rock like this, that gold isn't going to slow this big ass rock down. It's going to still come out the end of your run. The only way that that is going to get caught, that piece of gold, is if it's off the rock. And the same goes for clay balls. Clay balls have an added negative effect of, if you have a clay ball running down here, it can stick to heavy material that's already collected in the bed and then pull it out and run it down, which is exactly what you don't want. Ooh, crunchy. Now, as for how short your sluice box can be, if you get the resonance time correct, so you're able to create a situation where all of your dirt is liquefied off the rocks and out of the clay balls. Fernie will tell you that most of your gold is going to get caught right at the very top of your sluice box. So the top maximum 20%. There's not even any riffles in that point. And that's because when it comes out of the hopper, it drops. Like, it literally vertically drops, and it creates a bubbling action here. It's dead space. And in that dead space, everything pauses. You want a box that creates a situation where your dirt pauses for half a second just here. What that allows to happen is a bubbling action that brings the lights to the top and the heavies to the bottom. It stratifies your dirt at this point. If you don't have that dead drop space, what ends up happening is your dirt and rock hit this and then start moving down the plate without stratifying first. And that means that you're going to have gold and light material all mixed up, and that's not going to, it's going to take a period of time to stratify before it hits the riffles, or as it goes over the riffles. To make that a little bit clearer, you're giving the gold an opportunity to sink because it paused for half a second at the top of the run, as opposed to waiting for it to sink as it travels over the riffles. You want your gold to be in contact with the bed of your sluice box, in contact with your riffles, as soon as possible to give it the best chance of making it into one of those capture zones. That is why we use miner's moss without riffles at the very, very top, because that interwoven mesh of the miner's moss allows for gold to drop into it. And because the water is constantly dropping on top and scooping light stuff out, there's almost always space up here. In our testing, we recover 70% plus in that top dead zone. So no matter what sluice box length is, you want to create that system at the top. And if you can do that, then you probably, honestly, in my opinion, maybe only need 2 riffles below it. Obviously, this is a really big high banker. So you're talking about what's the smallest version of that? Well, if you come over to something like this, this is 8 inches wide, that is 12 inches wide. I have a sluice now that's only 5 inches wide. And after some modification with the matting and the spray bar system, again, the spray bar system to increase resonance time, the most important thing was getting feed rate right. So this isn't that sluice, but this can't take as much dirt as that. And it's simply because of the width. The more width you have, the higher your feed rate can be. Width allows your material to evenly spread across the box and not create a really thick layer of slurry. When your dirt goes down the run, because you've created that dead space at the top, or even if you haven't, you're going to get a slurry where as the material travels down, you're going to have the light stuff on top, or your silt and your really light sands, and then you might have some gravels, then you'll have your rocks, then you'll have your tin or your ironstone, and then you should have your gold and other heavy minerals on the bottom. That might all happen in a really thin film, but the thicker you make that film by feeding it, the more chance you have of the gold not settling through it to hit the capture zones, or you overload your riffles. So they fill up, they don't have an opportunity to do a clear out, which is what your clean water does, and you lose gold that way. When we're talking about size, it's not so much the size of the box, but how fast you feed it. An optimal setup, in my opinion, if you wanted, and this goes back to David's question, if you wanted to lose a maximum of 15% of your gold, which I think is actually pretty reasonable, and that's a whole other video, but I think you're going to need at least 3 to 4 inches of dead drop zone, regardless of the width of your high banker. And that should allow you to create a situation where the gold has plenty of time to start stratifying. Then I would suggest that you maybe need another 3, maybe 4 inches worth of some kind of riffles. And on a run that short, I would be using miner's moss and expanded mesh, because you really want to give some kind of aggressive hiding place for your sluice box. The problem with it is it's going to fill up really fast if you do that. That's why you have length. So width dictates feed rate, length dictates how long you can run it, and capture rate. So the reason you have a longer sluice is to allow more time for the dirt to stratify and come in contact with those riffle bars. The reason that you have a wider sluice, so you can feed it faster. Therefore, I think the shortest sluice box you could probably get away with is maybe 6 to 8 inches worth. But I'd hazard a guess you'd have to do a lot of clean outs in between. Well, I hope that has answered some of your questions, David. And I look forward to your experimenting. You did say that you would try to build one. I would be really keen to see what you come up with. Remember, good spray bar setup and a dead drop zone, and you should have a really decent recovery. Please give your dog a big scratch behind the ears for me. Peace, and I'm out.